All
Sound
right.
good?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's interview. Today, I'm talking to Michael Carey. He is a host, a reporter, an MC. He pretty much just does it all, and he rants a lot about paint schemes on Twitter. That's how I actually found you, Michael. So, Michael, how are you doing today?
Great, Brandon. How are you? Thanks for having me. I appreciate this.
I really appreciate you coming on board. Like I said, that's one of the highlights of my NASCAR Twitter is just seeing like you point out because I know even yesterday you pointing out how Cole Custer's Haas automation scheme has slightly changed with each race, and I was like, man, that's I hope one day I hope to be that observant that I can be like, oh, this guy's paint scheme is slightly changed, this or that, and all.
I mean, a lot of times with that, it's just I was watching the race, and I thought at first he had Bear Bond on his on the fenders,
Hmm.
and then I pulled up images from a source of mine, and I was like, oh my god, they like the third straight week they changed the car. I just thought it was weird, and I'm surprised a lot of people didn't even notice that.
Hmm. I guess to jump into it, Michael, how did you first, I guess, get into NASCAR, either as a fan or just like kind of being in the sport?
So, Brandon, to answer that first question, is how my mom tells it. So I was about 2 or 3 years old, and this is like 1998 or nine, and I was watching TV. I was playing with my toys, whatever, being a toddler, and she was flipping through the channels, and all of a sudden a race was on, and I just got hypnotized by, I guess, the speed and the fast colors and everything. She changed the channel, and then all of a sudden I started screaming, crying. Like she couldn't figure out what was wrong. She got me more food, she got me toys, nothing worked. And then she flipped the channel back to racing and I stopped. And then she did it one more time, screaming and crying, changed it back, and I was fine. So ever since I was 2 or 3 years old, I was just hypnotized with NASCAR. And that's kind of a rare thing when you live in Philadelphia. You're expected to be a Phillies, Eagles, Flyers, Sixers fan. You say you're a NASCAR fan and you got three heads on your shoulders. It looks like, people will question you every way to Sunday on that stuff. But yeah, ever since I was 2 or 3 years old, I've been into it.
When did you first decide that you kind of wanted to take that step from being just a fan to being like a reporter or being like involved in the sport?
Well, first, I want to be a race car driver, and being in Philadelphia, that wasn't going to happen. So,
Hmm.
um, in eighth grade, I was the president of student government at my middle school, and one of the responsibilities was doing the morning announcements every day. So those announcements were strictly just over the loudspeaker, nothing special. But people started recognizing my voice. And then one day I just thought, what if I were to marry NASCAR and, my voice basically and become a reporter? And I spent so much time watching NASCAR Race Hub and Steve Burns, Danielle Trotta, Jimmy Spencer. Like I loved Steve and Jimmy's banter back and forth during the show. Always loved listening to Mike Joy, Alan Bestwick. So I just wanted to marry those two together. And, you know, what is it? Over a decade later, it's working so far. So I think something's going right.
That's awesome. So for me, like I said, I follow your Twitter, but the moment I really started seeing that were involved with the sport, was coming across an article you wrote on TobyChristie.com. In an age where most people are only interested in doing, podcasts or doing videos on YouTube, what made you want to break news or share your opinion through writing?
So something I was told in college really was writing will always be one of your greatest tools when it comes to getting jobs and things of that nature. People will judge you more on your writing skills than your video or your podcasting skills, especially article based. So if you kind of pay attention to the way a lot of NASCAR younger content creators are, it's all about videos, it's all
Hmm.
about podcasts. Articles are sort of getting lost in the mix. However, when you look at a website like TobyChristie.com, they've been around for only 2 or 3 years, and their audience has been growing every month. I mean, the numbers are staggering. So there's clearly a demand to have that written aspect. Um, so when it came to breaking the news, yeah, you can do videos, but if you look at who's out there now, I mean, you have like Eric Estep, Black Flags Matter, Danny B, The Iceberg with Jared. A lot of people, they're all doing sort of the same thing,
Yeah.
but putting their own twist on it, which is fine. They got a great audience, and I watch them too. But writing is sort of getting lost in the mix. And that's always, like I said, that's a tool that will take you much farther in your career than making videos. The way you write your emails, the way you write your tweets, your resume, your cover letters, that's a tool you can take anywhere, really. So if NASCAR doesn't work out, I can go write for a local news outlet or something.
Yeah.
So just having that skill set and building that up really was just sort of the best of both worlds. And don't get me wrong, I do want to get on camera, which, there are some things in the works. So hopefully things work out. But for now, writing, you can also really sit down and really think about what your content is going to be.
Yeah.
And, there's no fancy video effects to add on, no intro, no outro. It's just type what's on your mind and see how controversial you can get, I guess, with my pieces.
Yeah, that's something in college with our theater program. That was something that was always the struggle where people would sit there and say, oh, well, this person's angry, so I need to have red lighting so the audience knows this person is angry or whatever. And for me, I always thought, well, no, I want it to be more of the actor or the the script they're reading or acting with. And I kind of feel the same way with except writing. With videos, you have people that they can dress up a background or they can have these special effects or segments. But to your point, there is something about writing where you don't dress it up. It's just, here's the story here. And it's almost like you let the person's imagination take it where they want to, with picturing it and all. So.
And part of the thing is too, like I said, when you come to like a NASCAR, I mean, this is where I think, someone like Eric does a great job. His videos are quite literally 95% him talking to the audience.
Yeah.
And then you have a little intro, a couple images here and there. That looks great. I think he could be a really good writer too, as are a lot of the NASCAR YouTube talents. But that was my major thing is, yes, I do have skill to edit video and do that, but that's also way more time consuming.
Yeah.
And that can really, when it comes to your work ethic and just how draining that can be, writing, I mean, I could type out 5 paragraphs in a couple minutes and then leave it for a couple minutes, go do something else, come back with a fresh mind.
Yeah.
With a YouTube video, once it's published, you can't do anything unless you make another video. So.
Moving on, anyone who follows you knows that you have a lot of opinions on the design of the number. In your opinion, whether it's the font, the size, the placement, whatever, why are numbers such a debated topic?
So this is kind of funny because this is sort of just thinking about life. Life always changes. It's always good to change is a good thing. So the number has been on the door for, I mean, we're talking decades, for a lot of NASCAR's history, the number's always been on the door. When you look at, though, when they decide to slide the number back a little bit, the sponsor has a much bigger space to work in. And the number only moved back, what, 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet? So the sponsor has a lot of space to work in, and there's no more contingencies. So they really have a nice, generous amount of space. That's really the whole point of a race car. There's a sponsor who's paying hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars to get their logo in front of as many people as possible. So the number's always been on the door for years consecutively. Fans clearly don't want change. But what really gets me is when I hear fans are saying, oh, I'm never going to watch the sport ever again if they move the number. It's like, are you really going to stop watching NASCAR over the placement of a giant sticker? But let's be real. But I just think some NASCAR fans just have a big problem with change, and that's okay. But you have to look at it from the sponsor perspective. They want their logo to be seen by as many people as possible for as long as possible. So And every sponsor has a different goal, whether it's logo recognition, brand recognition, whether they're promoting a product or a service. Um, Brandon, I think a lot of fans just don't like change, but you have to look at it from, all angles to really get a good understanding of why it would happen.
Hmm. Yeah, that was something that when they first announced it, I was being one of those hardcore fans. Even the contingencies, I was like, you have to have those. You got to have those 20 stickers, or it's not like a NASCAR stock car. Um, but with the All Star race, and even just I think a lot of like kind of you hammering home like, well, there's a middle ground. You don't have to sit there and put a little 5-inch sticker of your number on there. There's these middle grounds, and I think even the All Star race kind of showed that you can do that in a way to where it doesn't look so foreign. But I guess it's incredible to me to watch where you'll post something and then just seeing the people that'll would like jump on that topic. Whereas I feel like there's drivers out there you could say, oh, this person sucks. And even their fans wouldn't jump on you. But as soon as you say
Mhm.
something about the number, it changes. And I've wondered if that's maybe just like you're messing with the identity. Like people, yeah, I guess think that's what the sport is. Like you have to have these certain things.
Well, if you want to get technical, the number can still be on the door if it's
Hmm.
wide enough and big enough. And what a lot of people aren't realizing either is if you pay attention to the way some cars, some paint schemes in the All Star race, how they looked, some cars did a really good job of
Yeah.
utilizing that space. Not every team did the best job, though. Like for example, when you look at Team Penske, their number is wide
Hmm.
and tall. If you move that back, the number is going to get smaller just a little bit because the number is so wide. But when you have someone like Kurt Busch, for example, a number that's thin and tall, you can move that number back
Hmm.
and it's still relatively the same size. I mean, you might see the number decrease in size by maybe 10 to 15%.
Yeah.
Not even a big deal. But I think a lot of the controversy also comes from, everybody's saying, oh, the cars don't look good. The designers did not have a lot of time to work with this format.
Yeah.
When you move a crucial part of the number, you'd be surprised how many paint schemes are designed around the number. If you move it back and you give designers, I would say, 2 weeks to really let their creative vision go wherever they want to go, let them design paint schemes with that number placement in mind. And I really believe that fans would have a much better reception towards the idea. This is why I think a lot of fans didn't like it, was
Yeah.
because some teams didn't change their scheme at all. I mean, look at, Denny Hamlin's car. To me, that looked horrible because you had the FedEx logo, you had the 11, and then nothing above the the wheel arc.
Yeah.
And something to pay attention to when the next gen car rolls around, when it's coming next year, that space between the window and the wheel arc, it's going to get smaller and it's going to get thinner basically.
Hmm.
So you can't really fit a really big sponsor decal like, Tracker Boats from Bass Pro
Yeah.
Shops. That's not going to fit that same size. It's going to get smaller. So the belief that like NASCAR is going to do whatever they want. No, there's a reason why people do stuff. If they're
Yeah.
not doing it to piss off the fans, but some fans just have that mentality of it's them versus NASCAR, it feels like, and that's just not the case.
Yeah. Through your articles and even your Under the Hood podcast, you've shared a lot of stories. Is there a particular guest or story, either on the podcast or through your writing, that's been your favorite?
Um, so you know, I know I became friends with a lot of the guests on the podcast before I recorded with them, but the two stories that kind of stand out to me really are from the Toby Christie side of things. I did an article back in October on a kid named Sammy Wilson. He goes by NASCAR Sammy on Twitter. He is a NASCAR fan who has autism, and he did a 7-day positivity tour back in October where he traveled across the Midwest. He went to places like I think Eldora, Chicagoland, multiple racetracks, just promoting autism awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And to see, Kyle Busch and Toyota gave him I think a RAV4, a brand new RAV4. He just got his license. Marcus Lemonis from Camping World gave him a brand new trailer to go across the country. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the kind of stories I really enjoy, because I always think about what are the stories that the big guys aren't picking up,
Yeah.
that Fox isn't doing, that NBC isn't doing. So that's kind of some of my motivation to do that stuff. And then when it comes to the podcast, the Ryan Vargas episode, that was my second or third episode, I believe. He got a lot deeper
Mm-hmm.
than I thought when it came to the mental struggle he went through when the early stages of his racing career were sort of up in the air. I mean, there was a point where he told me, if he didn't perform well in this particular season, he was done
Mm-hmm.
and he wouldn't be full time with JDM. And Ryan was a very transparent guest, which is fantastic,
Mm-hmm.
because it's always better when you have a guest who will give you a lot of information to work with
Yeah.
than too little. And Ryan Ryan and Raja Karuth are two drivers specifically that I pay attention to. They're very old school,
Mm-hmm.
where, I mean, if you pay attention to Ryan last season, I mean, he was working on pit road for JDM
Yeah.
and then part-time in the car. Raj did the same thing in the offseason, where he actually went to the shop and he was standing there doing nothing, and he started asking questions about the car, and all of a sudden he's making templates for the car. So it seems like those two are they're that rare classic breed of drivers that not only drive the car, but they work on the cars they're driving. They're not like
Yeah.
traditional drivers that just show up to the racetrack, hop in the truck, race, go home. Like, they actually will pay attention to the race car and learn about the machine that they're driving.
Mm-hmm. That's really awesome. Yeah, yeah. We actually had NASCAR Sammy. He was our the first episode of this season of our interview series, and he had actually won a. We do giveaways on our Instagram page all the time, and he won a pack. And he was like, "Hey man, like, thanks so much. I'll give you a shout out on my Twitter." And I was like, oh, okay, well, I always appreciate that. But I ended up looking into it, and that's when I started uncovering like the articles on him and just kind of his story. And it was just incredible to see that here's this movement right here happening. And it was an awesome interview, because I even told him that it was something that hit home for me, because where I work at, we have a lot of people who come from like a background, like a special needs background or whatever. And when I went into that job, I had all of these kind of, preconceived thoughts of, oh, this is how, those people are. But then after working there, I thought, man, that was like, that's not true. Like,
Mhm.
these are the same as anyone else. And that's one thing I really liked about his story, was that it was using that to help better better the NASCAR community, um and just all of that. And I was like, it's just awesome seeing how many people out there are doing great things, even like yourself, like with the looking at the design or sharing the stories of people. It's awesome getting to see, even if just a handful of people now get to see the story of this person.
And I appreciate that, Brandon. And that's why in January, the designer spotlight series on the website was a big thing, because, it was really, everybody knows. I mean, a lot of the NASCAR Twitter community, they know who Ryan is, Kyle Williams. They know who these people are, but what drove them into designing? And someone like Kyle Sykes, for example, he's full time with Trackhouse now, but 2 years ago, he was just designing random cars and putting them on social media just
Yeah.
for concepts. And Ryan Pistana was doing the same thing. And then all of a sudden, here comes, Kyle won the nationwide contest, and then Ryan Pistana is doing work for Martin Motorsports, and now
Hmm.
he's doing work for Haley Deegan and Ryan Vargas. I mean, those are the kind of stories that I love. It's the stories that the big guys aren't paying attention to.
Yeah.
And there could be a variety of reasons why they don't pay attention to those stories, but that's the job of a journalist, is
Hmm.
to dig deeper, find those stories no one's talking about. And the reception seemed great. I'm very thankful for that. There's a couple more I want to do down the road. Um, but that's always been one of my things, is I'm a proud I'm a proud person to support other people in their job and their work,
Yeah.
and also bringing their stories to light.
Yeah, we actually found it through. We had Sean McGee. We've had him on a couple of times, and he was telling me about the podcast. And he's one of them that I, after that interview, I thought you could have this could be a 10-part series of diving into his story or just like into design. And so that was one thing I really liked about your show was getting to dive in. And I know y'all had like Greg from Off Axis, and we interviewed him, and I just thought that's so cool that he's on there because I know like my interview was cool, but I know now that there's a whole nother set of questions that'll be presented on this and all. So even as a fan, I was just like, man, Michael's got so many awesome people, on these interviews and all. So
Well, that, the round table that came together really on a limb.
mhm,
It was actually about this time last year where I always followed those designers. I always followed Harris, Sean, Ryan, Kyle, and even Emily. And I think it was like an Instagram message. Like I just got them all together. I said, I have this crazy idea. Can we do this?
mhm,
And they all did it. And that's what led me to create, the NASCAR design community Discord server, to give every designer in the sport, whether you're established, whether you're just starting out, let's put everybody in the same pot. Let's all work together, make each
mhm.
other better designers. Because the the world of NASCAR design is so underappreciated.
Yeah,
Everybody sees what cars go on track. Everybody compliments those cars. I got 4 cars right up there.
mhm,
Everybody knows who drives those cars.
yeah,
I've always been more interested in who designed the cars. And that's always been kind of a mission of mine. It was actually yesterday, 1 year ago, that really kicked off the spreading,
mhm,
the information of who these designers are. Um, that's always been a mission of mine. In every one of my paint scheme reveal stories on tobychristie.com, if I know the designer, I'll text them and I'll say, "Hey, I'd love a comment from you on the design of the car."
mhm.
We just did it with Emily Butler. She did the number 23 for Blaine Perkins, the Raceline Camaro. So I got her take on that, just to show that they're not being forgotten. Because
Yeah,
oftentimes designers, they are forgotten, and that's someone's livelihood. Like someone sat there for hours, concept after concept. I just talked to a designer the other day, and he said he put out, I think, for one car for one sponsor, he did like 8 concepts,
mhm.
and only one of them's going to make it on the track, or none of them will. So there's always just been this level of, I feel like I wouldn't call it unappreciation,
Yeah.
but the spotlight needs to be more on the designers. I want to know who made that car and why they designed it the way they did.
Yeah, because I think on the Sean episode, I even brought up that people they know Jeff Gordon, they know Dale Earnhardt, but I feel like maybe just as many people know, oh yeah, the 24 Rainbow car, the black number 3, like the paint schemes are so associated with the driver that it's almost as iconic with people remembering like, oh yeah, this is the Rainbow 24 or whatever. And to your point, I think that's even today, there's people that know so and so from this paint scheme or whatever.
Well, also part of that too is Sam Bass. I mean, he quite literally crafted a generation defining design palette.
Hmm.
He did, Jeff Gordon's Rainbow Warrior. He did the Hot New Look in 2001. He did Firestorm in 2009. And I'm just scratching the surface. I mean, he
Yeah.
worked with Kevin Harvick, Tony Stewart, Jimmy Johnson, Dale Jr. He basically gave DEI, those iconic stripes that came from
Oh,
Sam.
really?
Yeah. See, people don't know this stuff.
Yeah.
And when people hear that, they get so surprised. It's like, wow, I never knew he did that. That's where the problem lies.
Hmm.
This was NASCAR's first officially licensed artist, and he doesn't even have a place in the Hall of Fame.
Hmm.
He has an award named after him, but that's why I wrote a 2,000 plus word article
Yeah.
on why he deserves a spot in the Hall of Fame. And I even I became a member of the National Motorsports Press Association this year, and my first submission to the Hall of Fame was Sam Bass.
Hmm.
And I wrote out a giant email about it. Hopefully it gets in. I don't know. But that right there is the perfect example. You know who the driver was. Car's iconic. But Sam Bass did that? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's where I take pride in letting people know that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
And it's a shame that it's not more public. And I always felt like he never really got the proper recognition he deserved.
Hmm.
But I mean, that's why I take to heart. I want the designers to be just as important as the drivers. And even like when I'm watching the race, we have the roundtable group chat. If I see like when Suarez was in the top 10
Hmm.
yesterday, I texted Kyle right away and I was like, "Oh, Trackhouse in the top 10," because I see that car, I think of Kyle. I don't think of the driver. I think of the
Yeah.
designer. So,
Yeah. Um, and finally, true or false? 2007 was the best year for paint schemes.
oh man, if it's not the best year, it's one of the best years. I don't know what it was, but 2007, 2007 and 2014, and
Hmm.
those are 2 years that really stuck out to me for some reason. Um, I just felt like some teams just really hit the nail on the head. I mean, one of my favorite cars from 2007 was Jeff Gordon's Department of Defense Chevrolet from the Coke 600.
Yeah.
He had that beautiful, it's a shame it wrecked 34 laps in, but he had that beautiful light blue flame job with the darker blue base, the yellow accent on the flame. That car was stunning. It was beautiful. Um, Casey Mears, 25. That's probably one of my favorite paint schemes of all time.
Hmm.
I don't know why. I as a kid, I remember that was the first diecast car I ever bought at a racetrack. When I
Hmm.
went to Dover in 2007, I bought that car. I have it somewhere. I gotta find it. But 2007 just seemed like mostly the Chevrolets for some reason
Hmm.
just felt like they had everything going right. And then you had the Red Bull Toyotas. Michael Waltrip Racing had
Yeah.
some great looking cars, even though they were always running in the back of the pack. Yeah, Brandon, 2007 was not the best year. It's one of the best years.
Yeah, that's when I sent it, I couldn't find the tweet, but I thought you had made that comment. And I remember going back and just I don't know if it's nostalgia or whatever, but like Michael Waltrip Racing was like my favorite race team. So I know even when I look back, I'm like, it's such a simple little like the lightning bolt or stripe or whatever it is. But I was like, man, that like the 99 Aaron's, the 55 Napa to me are two of the most just beautiful race cars to ever hit the track. As well as there's I don't know if you remember the scheme, but the Supercuts car that Fitz Motorsports had. It was 22, and it was in the Bush series, but it was like pink, purple, had some white, some yellow in it, and it's for all the reasons it should be a scheme that I don't like, but to this day, it's one of my all-time favorite paint schemes, and I think it ran in 2008, but they unveiled it in 2007.
So this was 2008. I'm gonna find this game now because I'm actually generally curious about this. You said it was the number 22.
Yeah, for Fitz Motorsports. Because Strimby was in it in 2007, and then Bliss drove it in 2008 for the
You
first
said
part.
this was Fitz Motorsports.
Yeah.
I don't remember that one, and I never have that problem. Because here's the thing: as a kid, I spent so many hours, and we're talking like hours,
Yeah.
like just going through so many paint scheme websites and forums, just trying to see, what the schemes are. And I feel like that was always something for me where if I was in computer class,
Uh-huh.
I wasn't doing the work. I was looking up paint schemes. Um,
See, if you do Fitz Motorsports 22, it should come right up. But there's one where they had like the Dodge emblem. It was like hidden, like behind the 22, but it was like right there. And then there was a couple of different
I
uh
say it. I say it. I
edits
say
they
it.
did.
Oh
Yeah.
wow. I have never seen that car. How did you find that car, Brandon?
Yeah, I was obsessed with like the smaller teams back in the day, and I started following them, and they had that scheme, and I instantly fell in love with it.
So here's my thing, and this is another paint scheme pet peeve of mine.
Uh-huh.
I'm an absolute sucker for when the spoiler
Uh-huh.
and the valence or the splitter match,
Yeah.
especially in yellow. Like Jeff Gordon's Pepsi cars, all of them were perfect if they had the yellow splitter and the yellow spoiler. They like, to me, that is like that will instantly make a paint scheme an ugly car a great car if it has the matching colors like that. I can't believe I never saw this car before. I really can't believe that.
I think it's just such an underrated because they were kind of like a mid-pack team, and then they ended up shutting down after 2008, but honestly about halfway through they started just kind of like going down a little bit. But I had actually interviewed Charles Lewandowski, and he did a starting park with them. And I told the guy, I
Okay.
was like, I was like, I know it was just a starting park ride, but I was like, to this day, that's one of my favorite paint schemes. And as a kid, I would go to school and have like in my folder have like Waltrip's car, Junior's car, but then have the 22 Supercuts car right there with them.
Now, see, here's my thing too. So I'm partially colorblind,
Uh huh.
so I can't tell if the yellow behind the 22 and on the bottom of the quarter panels and in the front fender, I can't tell if that's yellow or green. And it's actually giving me a headache. And that's something too. I make all the graphics for Toby Christie's social media presence.
Uh huh.
And I have to actually wear like special glasses to, well, one for the blue light, but the other thing is too, like when it comes to getting the colors right,
Yeah.
I have to take a separate image of whatever I'm working with. If it's like, for our race picks, I color match the race pick to the to the winner, or to the car. So if I'm picking Noah Gregson to win the race and his sponsors Bass Pro Shops, I'll have the background silver and the number, the correct color scheme. So I'll pull the 5-point from Junior Motorsports and get the colors as accurate as possible because my eyes, I can't tell if it's right or wrong 9 times out of 10.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't tell that's yellow or green, and it's bothering me now.
Yeah, it's like I want to say yellow, but it was almost like kind of like the neon that Menards used, like back when they first
That's fair.
started. Yeah, where it was like it keeps you guessing. But yeah, I guess that's just an example of how it's amazing how a paint scheme can just stick with you. Like
Mhm.
whether it's winning races or whether it's mid pack or whatever, it just sticks with you. And to this day, it's amazing because every so often I'll run into someone who remembers the scheme and I'll be like, oh, yeah, I remember that. And I'll think, yes, you did.
Well, that's a designer's job, is to produce a good paint scheme,
Hmm.
but also make it memorable. And there's a number of paint schemes I remember as a kid that Sam Bass did.
Hmm.
The Rainbow Warriors, the first one that comes to mind. That's their job. And the paint scheme was so dominant. It's iconic. It defined a generation. And that was one of Sam Bass's crown jewels of work.
Hmm.
And that, like I said before, that's where I want to keep giving the designer that spotlight, where the car is beautiful, but who made the car?
Yeah.
Why'd they make it that way? And a lot of times designers have some really great stories, whether it's, oh, I had an hour to put that car together, like
Hmm.
I made it Tuesday at midnight and by Wednesday morning it was wrapped. I mean, the designers have so many good stories, so many good stories. And like I said, it's always been my job to bring those stories forward, Brandon.
Well, Michael, I really appreciated you joining me today. For the listeners at home, if they want to learn more about you, where can they find you out online?
So you can always go to tobychristie.com. I'm putting articles on there pretty much every other day. YouTube, Michael Carey Media, Twitter @Michael Carey, 2 L's. Yeah, I'm an easy guy to find. I mean, you know, I feel like a lot of my opinions and tweets kind of go far sometimes. So
Mhm.
you'll find me somewhere. Believe me.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, Michael.
All right, Brent. Thank you.